Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's crime on the streets of San Francisco when I put Stuart Rosenberg's The Laughing Policeman against Thomas Carter's Metro. And this was a hard decision because both of these movies are really good in their own way, and they both are gritty with a lot of spectacular action in them. So let's just dive right on in to the nitty and the picky. First up, we have Stuart Rosenberg's The Laughing Policeman. Now, Stuart Rosenberg, usually a director that's doing like, mid-ass Paul Newman movies like Cool Hand Luke or like Pocket Money. I believe Pocket Money or Pocket Change, whatever the fuck that dumbass movie is. But here he's doing a film that's like dark, gritty police drama featuring Walter Matthau, who was at this point in his career, was on a streak of doing a lot of serious films as opposed to most of his comedic films that he did, usually with Jack Lemmon. But here he plays like, coming off of the great Charlie Varick, here he plays on the other side of the law. He's a police officer, very weathered, kind of not necessarily at the end of his rope, but definitely kind of tired of the bullshit. The film opens with this shooting on a bus, basically a massacre. We don't see the gunman, so this offers up a mystery. We are just as in the dark as the police officers investigating this crime are, but we see the mayhem that happens, but we don't see who causes the mayhem. And, it's set up very brilliantly, very much so, like, the kind of like setup that would, give Hitchcock a boner. And we see through the opening credits, we see the police officers investigating it, the crime scene and all this stuff. And, not only do we have Walter Matthau, we got the great Bruce Dern, who has a fantastic mustache in this film. And he's a spectacular sleaze in this. And the great Louis Gossett Jr., he's brilliant too. And then Anthony Zerbe as the police captain, Anthony Zerbe was always good at playing a fucking prick. And he's no exception here. He is prick par excellence in this film. And so the setup is there. Now they're investigating this crime. And then through this investigation, we not only like see like how hard it is to investigate a crime like this, but also at the same time, the toll that it takes on the personal lives of these police officers, specifically Walter Matthau, who's so dedicated to the job that he can barely be bothered with his own family, And a twist to this crime is that his partner is one of the people that's killed on the bus. And it comes to light that, he was investigating a crime that Walter Matthau had investigated and couldn't never figure it out. And so now he was on the case, and through all this shit, it finds out that they were just trying to get rid of this dude. And it ended up that as subterfuge, they just kill every motherfucker on the bus, But he gets paired up with Bruce Dern in the film, and their chemistry is just absolutely brilliant because, like, Bruce Dern was one of the greatest actors of the 1970s and has one of the best lines, if not the best line in the movie, when they finally find the suspect and they're tailing him. Nobody but Walter Matthau believes that it's this guy. And they're looking at it and say, well, who's that short guy with him? He's like, oh, that's his lawyer. Well, oh, this guy looks like he's got enough juice to get a sodomy charge reduced to a following too closely. That is just fucking a brilliant line and stuff. And the other thing, the brilliance is the nuance of Bruce Dern's performance, as he's a spectacular sleaze, but it's not overstated. It's just the way that he hits on like every chick that he comes in contact with, and the way he checks them out and stuff. And there's also a brilliant scene in a gay bar and stuff. But of course, the film takes place in San Francisco in the early 1970s, and it does a really great job of like showing how like fucked up crazy that city was at that particular time, even more so than Dirty Harry did. It really just shows the sleaze, like, they go to the underbelly to try to find this, to solve this crime, fucking titty bars, gay bars, all kinds of the manner of sleaze infested shit, and all sorts of characters, even some Hell's Angels characters in this, and they end up solving the fucking crime. And even like there's some great chase sequences in it, and the banter between Bruce Dern and Walter Matthau is fucking brilliant, and it also deals with a lot of the race relations and stuff. You know, there's the scene where Louis Gossett Jr. and Bruce Dern are going after a suspect, and Lou Gossett is trying to explain to him, you know, what he's doing wrong, and how he's handling the situation wrong and stuff. And what's beautiful about it is it's not overstated. It kind of like just shows you, and that was something that the '70s were good at when it came to films, you know, because there was a lot of social unrest, a lot of social change, and a lot of the movies like this dealt with it in a manner that were a lot better than most movies. They didn't like most of the movies didn't hit you over the head with a sledgehammer. They still tried to have an entertaining film while at the same time showing you what the fuck was going on in the world. And you know, when they finally get the guy as a brilliant fucking chase sequence, it starts on a bus, ends on a bus. Pretty fucking brilliant. And then that ending of like when that other cop was like, "Oh, we found the guy that looks like the shooter. What are you gonna do?" Well, would have been useful, you know, later. They already killed the guy and everything. So it's just fucking brilliant. And then we move on to Thomas Carter's Metro, starring Eddie Murphy, who, you know, yet again another comedic actor that is playing a more serious part. And Eddie Murphy does it pretty good, you know, but the thing about this one is he can't not be Eddie Murphy. You know, there are glimpses where he's like real serious, real intense, but then of course then he does the Eddie Murphy thing. In this film, he's playing a hostage negotiator, also taking place in San Francisco, and filmed entirely on location in San Francisco. And you know, a pretty good opening too, because we see how he operates, you know, and even if that one chord, would you want manual or automatic, and then the dude's Donald Logue, who's holding a bunch of people hostage, they automatically just shoots him, you know. That is, you know, it's kind of corny, but you know, it works for what it is. But you know, and then what kind of sets everything in motion for this film, kind of the call to action, is Eddie Murphy's friend in the film ends up killed when he investigates a potential suspect for a crime, played by Michael Wincott, who is absolutely brilliant as the villain in this film. Michael Wincott, of course, you know, he usually played villains in films in the '90s, and dude had a great voice. It's like Dennis Leary trying to do a Tom Waits impression. It's just fucking brilliant, you know. And he has a lot of good time, like chewing up the scenery and stuff, and like. But the problem I have with Metro is at times it just doesn't know what the fuck it wants to be. You know, of course, Eddie Murphy gets paired up with a partner that he doesn't want, you know, a guy coming from SWAT, played by Michael Rappaport, who's not as annoying as Michael Rappaport usually is in movies. He's actually pretty badass in this. You know, he's kind of, you know, honestly, he might be, other than Michael Wincott, Michael Rappaport might be the best performance in this film. And of course, there's a love interest. You know, they always, especially in the Eddie Murphy movies, they always had to have a love interest and a romance. The lovely Carmen Ejago plays a reporter that, you know, they had a thing in the past, but it didn't work out because, you know, he's also a compulsive gambler. You know, very tropey. The film is tropomatic like a motherfucker. And what throws it off for me is like most movies, you know, the way some of these judgments come off is almost like I'm against romance and shit. It's like, I'm not against romance if it's organic to the fucking story. And in this one, she's like dating a baseball player, and like this dude's supposed to be like amazing as shit. Everybody loves him and stuff. And you know, she doesn't want to be with the Eddie Murphy character because he's a compulsive gambler. She can't really trust him and all this shit. But all through one fucking dinner, they're all of a sudden back together. And then even after that dude, Michael Wincott's cousin in the film, tries to kill her, they're just somehow that brings them close together. And I feel like, well, that probably would have tore them apart further. Either you would have got her out of the fucking town by then, or she wouldn't want to have anything to do with you because she doesn't want to put her life in danger. But somehow that brings them closer together. Like soon after she's almost killed, they're in a fucking like restaurant, have a fancy restaurant, having dinner, getting ready to go to Tahiti. And then like, I will say this about Metro though. The action is spectacular in the film. There's that fucking brilliant chase sequence through the streets of San Francisco with the streetcar and stuff, and then they block it with the car. That shit's fucking brilliant. That's how they catch Michael Wincott. And then, but then that dude escapes from jail and then fucking kidnaps Carmen Ejago and holding her hostage. It's just like, by that point in time, you're kind of tired of the movie, and you know shit's gonna work out right. You know, if they really wanted to like push the limits of what this movie could be, they would have killed the Carmen Ejago character off and really gave Eddie Murphy a reason to go raw on this motherfucker. You know, no pun intended. But instead, it's just kind of basic. You know, and plus, too, it's not really true to who that character really is. I mean, dude's a hostage negotiator. He's not like some fucking adrenaline junkie SWAT guy, cop or some shit, you know. But here, even in the beginning of the movie, you hear him say, I haven't shot anybody in over 3 years and all this shit. And, you know, he shouldn't do it when he has to. Granted, his friend died, or his friend got killed, so he's trying to get revenge and stuff. But, you know, it just, like I said, the film, even at times too, feels like a fucking TV movie. You know, like the guy they got to play the captain is lame as fuck, and most of the side characters, other than Michael Rappaport and Michael Wincott, are just absolute dog shit. You know, so this round clearly has to go to The Laughing Policeman because, one, it's just more solid. It knows what the fuck it is. It's not trying to be pretty or anything. It's just showing you the real ass shit of what police officers have to go through to investigate a fucked up crime like this, when you got no leads and everything's just like every single side character is fucking brilliant, you know, even like just all the sleaze and shit that you see, it's all dealt with in a respectful manner. And, you know, it's very rare when you see a good Stuart Rosenberg movie. So for anybody keeping score, that's 75 to 57. 70s are kicking mucho ass. They're now up by 18. That lead just continues to fucking grow. Because, I mean, like I said, the 70s were really great at having movies that were, you know, real ass films, but also like had something to say, you know, knew what they were and weren't trying to really weren't trying to have a hero. Like, even though they catch the guy in the end, they don't really feel like they accomplished shit. You know, they just feel like it's just another job. Whereas like in Metro, it's like, you know, dude blows up and they're just off to fucking Tahiti. You know, that kind of shit worked in Trading Places. It don't really feel right in Metro. You know what I mean? But if I've said anything wrong, anything you disagree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. You know, this shit's all up for debate. It's just one asshole's opinion. I'm on this self-indulgent journey to figure out which decade was better for movies, the 70s or the 90s. It's looking like I'm right, but knowing the 90s, they can always come back and like shrink that lead. And who knows, eventually they may fucking get ahead. I could be wrong. There is that possibility. I'm far from infallible. But right now, looking like I'm right as a motherfucker. So any film professors that want to use this shit, feel free. But we got to talk compensation, because nobody works for free. And all you film bros out there, throw your opinion at me like I give a fuck. You know, most of you motherfuckers don't know shit about movies, you know. I've forgotten more about film than your motherfuckers will ever know, so fight me on it. I don't give a shit. That's what the comment section's for. So stay tuned for all these bonus rounds and main events. You know, I'll do these shits whenever I have a chance, you know, of course, but you always get at least one every week on Saturday. So stay tuned for that.